Happy Thanksgiving to those in America who celebrate it.
That's very
USA.
thoughtful of you to clarify that in the beginning.
Yeah, not everyone celebrates, but if you're listening to this on Friday, you have just enjoyed some turkey and cranberry sauce, perhaps, and spent some time with the fam and the friends. And,
my rule is eat the Thanksgiving dinner again for breakfast.
Oh, okay, good, right. So,
or pumpkin pie for breakfast. Either of those things.
Yeah, that is not a rule. That is a commandment from God, if you ask me. We hope that you were enjoying breakfast pie with us on this Friday after Thanksgiving. I am but one half of this fine chat. My name is Matt Silverman, joined as always by Colette Bennett. How are you? Happy Thanksgiving.
I'm great. And I would love to be like, I am so full of pie, but I can't because in reality, we aren't recording this show on Friday morning. So I hope to be full of pie by the time listeners are hearing this. Very full of pie, like can't move. Kind of full.
I had a ridiculous thought of what if I didn't eat for the rest of the week just to gear up for the ultimate, but I don't think I'd make it. I don't think I'd get there.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely know people who fast for big meals, but for the whole week seems like a lot. I don't know,
yeah,
maybe the day before or something, or the day of, but maybe all week, you might get thin. Thinner.
Yeah. I would pass out. Even doing it for one day, I'd probably lose consciousness. So we don't advise it, but we hope wherever you have enjoyed and are enjoying the leftovers. And we were planning to talk about games we're playing and all the good stuff we typically regroup to discuss here. But you had a fantastic idea.
I did. Thank you for saying that. I thought that people do take this time to reflect on things they're thankful for, which I think is nice. But I also think that gratitude is something that's really fun to cultivate more often than just Thanksgiving. That said, since it is the official holiday, it got me kind of thinking about gaming in general and how incredibly grateful I am to, games for existing in the first place. But then I wondered, I wonder what our community and our listeners, what about gaming they would immediately trigger their feelings of gratitude. And so, we asked in our lovely Discord and we got some beautiful answers that, of course, made me go, oh, our member Honeybro, who said, I'm thankful that my older cousin sat me down in front of a TV with Mario Brothers back in 1989 and handed me a controller. The years and years of fun were started in that moment when I jumped up and down with a plumber. The way he put that just got me. I was like, oh, and I also relate too, because for me, my sit down was with my uncle and I was 5 and it was Pac-Man, I think. But I was so little that I actually have a photo of that. I should share it.
Oh, that's great that you have that.
You know what? Maybe I should send you that. And when we share the episode, we can share the picture. But it's a great photo. But that is I'm grateful for that because it happened, but I'll be honest, I don't remember it well because I was so little. I just know it was important. When I see the photo, I see my face and I'm like, oh my God, look how happy I am. But I think my big moment was probably, and the thing I'm the most grateful for of that particular era was the NES and The Legend of Zelda specifically. It just, I was so wide-eyed with wonder. And it's really funny because if you look at Zelda now, I feel like you're like, wow, what a simple game, right? But, in 1988 or whatever the fuck it wasn't. And my little imagination was going wild. And so I would play the game and then I would march out into the kitchen where my grandmother was working on food. And I would be like, Mama, I just played this and I found the 4th dungeon and I had to go through this graveyard and the ghosts tried to get me. And I have to be careful because when I touch the gravestones, they'll come out of the graves. And to my grandmother's credit, bless her soul, my grandmother either feigned or had the utmost of interest in this particular story. If I tried to explain a video game story to my grandmother, she was rapt. So that is was a very, very memorable and important memory for me, I think, as a child, to feel like these worlds that were so important to me that someone was listening to me about how great they were.
Yeah, well, that I was about to say, that's the mark of a wonderful person and grandmother or family member, of like, whatever your kids are doing, you don't really care most of the time. But when they come to you and say, whoa, oh my gosh, you can tell the adults that are like, yeah, whoa, that's so cool. And the adults that are like, And that makes a difference. It makes a difference
it's hard
to kids.
Because like kids, I feel like, have almost like a natural hyper focus, whether they have ADHD or not. And so like, kids can get so excited and talk for so long. And so I know I had to be long-winded, and I just kind of always remember that she listened anyway,
But this is not just I don't know, we're biased, of course, but this is not a kid in the back room building a block tower. Like, this game, you said, oh, it was so simple. In retrospect, no, we've discussed this. Legend of Zelda is an open world, non-linear exploration adventure action game in 1985 or whatever. I always mess up my dates there.
I don't remember the date either.
It's an extraordinary thing. So of course our minds were blown. And we're revealing our age when we say, oh, it all started. Honeybrew is saying Super Mario Bros. Like, that was it for me. That was the gateway. And of course, historically, like, the video game industry crashed sort of ahead of our, I think you and I roughly the same age. So right ahead of our coming into sentience in the early 80s, video games were just not that popular. And then Nintendo comes around, and it was like, holy shit, this is happening. But I want to go back to Pac-Man. What is the context? You said your uncle. So he had what? An Atari? And what's the context of this?
He had an Atari, and he had a computer. Okay. And I think that we used to go to their house sometimes for holidays. And I know there were at least 2 different occasions, because the one with the photo was like, I know I was 5. Because I know from the date on the back of the photo. But then there was a later visit where I was clearly like older, because I was allowed to go down the hall and into his office where he had a PC set up, and I was allowed to play text adventure games.
Yeah.
And so that's where I got to play, Zork. And a game that I will never forget, that I've probably mentioned on the show before, called Leather Goddesses of Phobos, that I should never have been allowed to play.
You have not ever said those words.
Really?
This is some sort of an R-rated situation going on.
I mean, it's not like porn or anything, but sure. It's it was an Infocom game. It came out in 1986. It was funny. It had general humorous tones, and it was a point and click, but it was like a spooky alien game, right? But like, I don't remember this from being a kid, but later in life I looked it up and found out that the Leather Goddesses invaded a planet and forced everyone to become sex slaves.
This is graphical? You said point and click. This is not a text adventure. This is graphics on the screen. Is that right?
Oh, that's right. Oh, wait, no. That was the sequel. I never played the sequel. The original Leather Goddesses of Phobos was text.
Text only.
There was a sequel. I didn't play.
I consider myself a connoisseur of early PC computer adventure games, and I didn't play a lot of text adventures, but I like to know about these things and be aware of them. I've never heard of this in my life.
Well, I'm going to send you a link so you can enjoy the cover, but it's like, that music that like when you see like an old sci-fi movie, like from like the 50s or something, the music is always like, like that kind of thing. When I look at this game, that's exactly what I hear in my head.
Do you know what instrument that is?
No.
That music is created by a theremin. Are you aware of that instrument?
Oh, theremin. Theremin. I know of it, but I did not. I did not think about that. No, I did not think about it.
I kind of want to get one. I secretly like it's so stupid, and it's one of those things that would just take up space. But like, wouldn't it be cool to play a theremin? Like just to fuck around with it. I don't know. That's okay. So text adventures. Side note: did we ever touch on Zork? I know you were a fan, and did I ever ask you like, have you? Forgive the pun. Have you returned to Zork ever? And does it hold up in any? Can you play it on mobile or something? Like what's going on with Zork?
You probably
these days?
can play it on mobile. I know that I was less than 10 years old when I played it because I remember having this and despite how frustrating this sounds, I'm very grateful for all of this. I remember, like, to me, when I think about Zork, I think about the fucking signpost. And what I mean by that is that when you begin, I think it's the original Zork, but when you begin the game, you're standing by a signpost, like, okay, cool. And then like, I would try to explore, but turn right, turn whatever. And as you know, text adventure games of that time were very word sensitive. You had to specifically know how to word things to get them to work right. Mm-hmm. So to me, all I think about when I think about Zork is like getting lost, not being able to find my way around, and then being like, oh, fuck. And then like going back, you were at a signpost. Fuck. Like, when am I ever going to get away from this goddamn signpost? And I couldn't get very far. I was too confused. So maybe I played that when I like knew how to read, but wasn't very mature. I don't know how old I was, but I had to be less than 10 because by the time I was 10, I was playing Zelda and stuff. So, but I was allowed to root around in this stuff and try different floppy disks.
God bless the cool uncles of the world who, your parents, classically speaking here, your parents aren't usually going to be the ones cool enough to be dabbling in, quite honestly, what is experimental, fairly cutting edge, like to have a personal computer on a desk in 1987.
Oh yeah,
it's like $1,000.
It was Titanic, of course. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He was a programmer, I believe.
Perfect.
And so, of course, he had the money, to do those things at that time, and
or diverted his money into the things that he cared a lot he needed to care about. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. So it's funny, right? I mean, I haven't spoken to that uncle in a very long time, and I'm sure he would be like, "What?" if he had any idea how important it was for him to show me those things, but you never know, right? So thankful for those family members that decided to share games. First off, it's a great one all the way. And then actually, never mind. You should read Duxana's, I think, because I wanted to segue into something, but I don't want to take over reading everybody's.
Yeah, for sure. Duxana has a really great one here. But briefly before we move on, I am stuck on this sort of 1980s gateway drug because again, we were children and the industry appeared, or sort of asterisk reappeared in its more modern form at the exact moment when we were sentient and could read and cool uncle has Atari and let's go. And similar to Honeybrew's moment here, went to a friend's house who had far more access to, like, his parents would buy him the consoles, and so he had Nintendo before any other friend the friend group had it. Went over there and we were just instantly obsessed, so like always wanted to go and be at that friend's house. And I will never forget my mom also showed interest. She never got like hardcore into any of it, though she really loved Tetris, but she understood that it was interesting and cool, or that she was fascinated by it as much as I was. So me wanting a Nintendo or asking for one was not, an alien thing. It was like, okay. And I don't remember if it wasn't Christmas, and I don't think it was birthday. I think it was like something like, hey, one day we will get this. And maybe it was a belated birthday present, or it was something. And I will never forget, I was at this friend's house. We are there playing Mario Brothers and Zelda. And then the phone rings and it's my mom, and she is calling the friend's house and she says, "We got it. We got a Nintendo." And I was like, bye. And I was like, I'm at it. And we, of course, remained friends, good friends all through elementary school. Like I wasn't, just using my friend for Nintendo, but it was a moment of like, oh, we have it and it's at our house. And we definitely got Super Mario Brothers and The Legend of Zelda. And those two pillars of, hey, running around, stomping on guys, like kept getting the flag, like action, whatever. And then switch over to, oh my God, going anywhere in this world with a sword. Never look back. That was extraordinary.
Absolutely. I love it. That's a perfect way of putting it.
Doxana says that they are grateful for the first time I ever won a Guilty Gear match. Is one of my bestest times playing a game because it showed me that you might fail a lot, but you'll get there eventually. And I'm happy I learned it with Alyssa, who's another member of the Discord.
I have so many things to say about this.
Go, do it.
This is beautiful to me. And it may not seem like it's that big of a deal, I guess. But when I read it, I see two things. Number one, you might fail a lot, but you'll get there eventually. Dude, the level of importance of that like lesson in life, like I have no words. Like, and it sounds so much easier than it really is. So that, number one. And I also think that games can definitely teach you that in a way that, depending on when you start playing games, that lesson can come in really handy, like in school or like in your, in your world, in your job, or, whatever, relationships. Like it's a big one. It's okay to fail a lot. Like it's not, it's okay. And then I loved that Doxana also said, I'm happy I learned it with Elisa, because that immediately made me think about how games have bonded me to other people so much, not just people that I played with, just people in general who, when I learned that they love games and they learned I love games, it forged, like a big part of our hearts immediately together. I mean, you and I have this podcast for that exact reason. And that to me is incredibly cool.
It's hard to think of another thing, medium, art form, fandom, as unifying or excitement oriented as games. And I'll elaborate by saying, like, of course, movies or franchises or like these all have their fandoms and people find each other through them. But there is I find that the passion around these lived experiences of like, oh, you spent 400 hours walking around the Hyrule? I spent 400 hours walking around. It's not the same as we both watched a movie and both like this movie.
Yeah.
It's like we both lived in this world at the same time, and now we have hundreds of hours of discussion to have about, oh, what about this? Oh, well, you can do this. Whoa, here's a speedrunner who did this crazy thing. Like, there is so much to talk about in a given game or franchise or genre. Yeah. I don't want to say games are the best, but like I don't see that as deeply in other mediums. What do you think about that statement?
Yeah, I think of course, like it's interactive,
right?
And so like that means that you have a different level of engagement. I mean, there's certainly people out there that will talk passionately about books or talk passionately about movies. Like I've certainly done my share of that myself. But I would argue that like more time is typically spent. Like, for instance, I feel like people get really invested in shows. Sometimes more than movies, because, like Game of Thrones is a perfect example, because it's so long. And so you spend so much more time in the world. You have the emotional bandwidth to get attached to characters or scenarios or storylines. And I think that that's what games have always, done for me.
Yes.
Is, the time spent. And so I kind of feel like, honestly, people that love watching shows and people that love diving deep into games are having somewhat similar experiences, whether they realize it or not.
Yep. Totally agree. And then I also love, for lack of a better term, secret knowledge of like a game is put out and there is an amount of knowledge about it, and then everyone in the world plays it and begins to uncover. And this could be actual secrets, like, oh, I creeped around this corner and then opened a secret door and then found a secret room, and that was a conscious thing that a developer hid in a world.
Right.
And then, talking about Guilty Gear or any whatever, if it's a challenging game or a competitive game or a multiplayer game, it's like a meta will form, and that's thousands of people getting together on the internet or even pre-internet to figure out, hey, I don't care what the developer planned or thought, if you punch super fast this way and then swing around the side, that's going to get him every time. We figured that out, and now everyone uses that move. Like, that is a communal interactive experience that, I don't care how deep you are in the Game of Thrones lore, like, you are not changing the lore even if you've watched it 700 times, but you are changing the meta you are changing the way people play the game if you are in that community. I suppose you can, there are plenty of Star Wars nerds who I'm sure who take pride in uncovering things. So it's not one-to-one, but that is just the unique thing that always grabs my brain in games in a way that no other medium does.
Yeah, no, I agree. I totally agree with that. It is pretty darn cool.
Pretty cool.
I am going on to hear what Alex had to say, because I also thought, and once again, this kind of furthers what I was saying about Duxana and friendships. I'm thankful to Destiny 2, not so much because of the game itself, although it is fun, but because it has allowed me to reconnect with one of my best friends, also named Matt, who moved out of state 7 years ago. Sure, we kept up through the occasional text or phone call, but our friendship definitely dwindled those first few years. Then one day he texted me about how he was really into Destiny 2 and asked if I wanted to play with him one night. I was on Game Pass, so I thought, why not? It turned out to be really fun, and it felt like we were actually hanging out for the first time in years. Now we play every Wednesday night and have really reconnected as friends and talk and text more than ever, and for that I am thankful. So cool. And also, I just as an aside to that, I feel like if you're a gamer, you likely had a great thing at your disposal last year when the pandemic began and we all felt so isolated, because you had that ability to reach out to someone and say, let's game, which most of the time we were doing online anyway.
Right. The social conduit, and also the escapism that we all desperately needed last year and a half. Again, to immerse yourself in whatever it was, 700 hours of Animal Crossing is just...
That's what I did.
It's more. It's necessary, and it is. I don't know. It's a little bit more immersive, I think, than binging 20 television shows. And if losing yourself in Netflix is the way you need to go and want to go, God bless. I think that's what we need. I think, I might talk about this a little bit later, but thank goodness we live in the time we live in, where we
really,
the pandemic was awful and horrible for many, many people, but for most of us, okay, I got to sit in my house and play video games for a year.
Oh, right. No.
Oh, no.
I mean, obviously I felt the same feelings of feeling trapped and feeling stuck and, all that stuff. But I mean, Animal Crossing not only was a game to throw myself into, to enjoy, but it also was specifically a setting that was so wholesome and so pure. And dare I even go to say, kind of just made you feel hopeful about life, even though it was just an artificial world. And whether we read that in a book or play it at a game or see it in a movie, I think that, life can be a real rough and tumble. And I think we need those type of signposts along the way, to remind us. I love Animal Crossing because often I just am like, I'm just going to plant some flowers. I'm just going to make this thing look nicer. I'm just going to paint my house. And like, maybe I'm taking this too far, but to me, those just doing those things and nothing else is pretty meditative.
Too far. I mean, you and millions of other people. This is exactly what we did.
It's totally true. Totally true. And I'm very, very grateful, for that being there. And obviously for even returning to it now because it's back. So we'll talk about that later.
Yes. Oh, yes.
More.
And I do want to just make an addendum to my previous statement. I don't want to minimize anyone's suffering, even if you were not afflicted by the virus specifically. Like, we all were afflicted with significant, if not serious, mental health challenges. Like you said, I am grateful that we live in a time of interactive media and Animal Crossing. Like, because imagine if it was, whatever, 1912 or 1919, whatever it was with the Spanish flu. Imagine if that's where we were. What are you going to do when you're locked in your house for 3 years? Read a book? I mean, you can, but that's all you got for a long, long time, for a long, long winter. That's gratitude. I have gratitude for the time we live in, as flawed as it may be sometimes.
Absolutely. Same. I definitely do. I'm just going to quickly digress and then we're going to bounce right back to this. But, I've noticed that sometimes religious people will say, I've learned to thank God, for everything, even the bad things. And I always thought, man, that's really odd. Like, I don't quite understand the thinking there. At least I thought that for a really long time. And I read, and maybe it was because it was like coached in that particular language, because later I remember reading something, a Buddhist, not an original text, but like a Buddhist book. And, the Buddhist book basically like kind of said something similar, but like to welcome in negative feelings and to welcome in difficult times like friends. And I was like, that is a tall order, right? But like, I think it's also helped kind of reformat my mind about a lot of things. Maybe not to just think of, what I think of as bad. And don't ask me how this directly ties into games, but I think more I'm just thinking of the pandemic and like, how for many people, the pandemic was absolutely terrible. And I think that the hard thing about it to me is that I think there were things about it that were also wonderful and helpful that it caused. Yep. But,
it changed, it disrupted a lot of status quo things in our world, in our governments, in our businesses. And I think the biggest evidence of those kinds of tremors is the labor upheaval of like millions and millions of people were like, you know what? Fuck this thing, whatever I'm doing now. Life is too short. Everything is going to hell. Like, I don't need to do XYZ that I've been doing for a bunch of years. Present company included. You and I both changed our job and professional situations, and our spouses also, reconfigured some stuff, I believe. And that is a profound, that has been such a profound impact of this really awful thing. A lot of people just turned around and said like, no, we don't have time for this shit anymore. There's more important things in this world. I'm going to make a change. That's cool. And I like that. I like the Buddhist version of that, of like, welcome in the negative things. And I assume, I don't know anything about Buddhism, except, the headlines, that it's like, these are challenges that, if you resist them, it will be a hard time. And if you tackle them, you'll learn. And I like that a bit better than, God's testing me. It's like, okay, that's, right. Someone's making decisions for me about what's going on. Like, okay, I don't know about that kind of thinking.
Right. Yeah.
But
definitely.
I digress. Pedro Cortez from our Discord says, I'm thankful for Supergiant Games because they keep making games that continually speak to me and are some of the most beautiful experiences I've had in my life.
That makes me go, first, it makes me groan with happiness. And then it makes me go, God, I've really got to go back. And I never finished Bastion.
Yeah.
And I bought Transistor and didn't dig very far. I don't know why. Probably because some other game distracted me. But like, I've got them both. And I really want to go back. When I finished Hades, I was like, I'm going to go back into these. And I haven't yet. And I really want to.
All are spectacular, but interestingly, similarly, I think I completed Transistor. I got no memory of it. I don't remember liking it. I felt like I was like, this is cool and interesting, and I have no idea what's going on. I remember not like understanding the story. But really, truly could have been a me problem. I don't even know when I played it. I'm trying to even think about like, were the kids babies? Was I like sleep deprived? Like, I don't know where I was in my life when I played this game.
You could have been, depending on the kids' ages, because if I'm not mistaken, I think the Transistor was like 2000. I'm going to guess 2016. Let's see. Nope, 2014.
14. So yeah, I don't have a big. My daughter would have been 1-ish, so that's not really the worst. This is random and tangential, but like, I played through the entire Mass Effect trilogy for the first time. I had never played them. While holding my daughter as an infant in a baby carrier, like it's the things that you strap to your body like a vest.
Yeah.
She did not want to go. She would not go to sleep or would not be soothed unless you were wearing her and like bouncing around. So I would stand at my desk wearing a child, bobbing up and down until she fell asleep, and then in front of me, so that I was not bored out of my mind and this was probably like late into the night, 2 a.m., whatever, blasting through Mass Effect for the first time. And I believe I went all the way through the trilogy.
I love it.
And that was my time with it. And, memory is foggy in that time due to sleep deprivation, but I get it. Yeah, I didn't fall madly in love with the Mass Effect universe, but I really did understand why the franchise is so beloved. Yeah, I appreciated it.
Yeah, I was on that same page. Like, I loved it, like the idea of it. And then I played that first game and I desperately wanted it to grab me, and it didn't grab me. Yeah. I'm not an American RPG fan usually, I found. I'm JRPG all the way. But, I still always hope to find something that changes that. I mean, well, actually, I was about to say Control, but then I remembered that Remedy is Dutch, right?
Oh, yeah, I don't know, but
and I guess you would consider that maybe an action game. See, it's so funny to me, and this could be an entire show, but like, what's the difference between the RPG and the action game other than like the format of like, turn-based fights, which like if you played Final Fantasy 15, you didn't have turn-based like fight formulas anymore. So I was like, okay, literally, I don't even know what makes an RPG anymore.
I mean, it depends how you thread the roots back into the old days. But if I had to answer that, my criteria is like, does your character grow, and do you make meaningful choices about their development as a character? I don't mean story-wise, but their strengths, their skills. RPG to me means here's the story, here's a game, here's an adventure, here's a story, and I get to choose if I'm going to be the sneaky guy or the magic girl or the warrior dude. And so if those are meaningful choices, then that is an RPG. And I think where we are today is like, Control is an action game, with I would argue very light, super light RPG elements. Oh, you can spec the gun up to be a little more powerful, or you can put some points in this skill or whatever. But ultimately, you're just Jessie, and you're progressing the story as she does, and kicking ass and using those cool powers. And you're not. My playthrough of Control is not going to have radically different powers than your playthrough of Control, and by that logic, I would say it's not much of an RPG. Maybe some light RPG elements. To me, the turn-based thing is not a factor. Warframe is a hardcore RPG, even though it's like an action shooter. I imagine Destiny is the same. It's all about speccing your skills and weapons and modifying characters and unlocking characters. That is super RPG-ish to me. I have another question for you about BioWare stuff, but let me know what your thoughts are here.
I don't want to dig too deep because I feel like I might have accidentally hit upon like an idea for like what necessarily like quantifies a genre or like crossover genres. So I'm not going to go down the path.
Mm-hmm. You're not going to take the bait?
No, I'm not going to take the bait, which says a lot for me because I have no impulse control. But I'm gonna bop over to Megalith real quick because I really liked what he had to say too. Mm-hmm. He said, "I'm thankful for Final Fantasy XIV and its absolutely phenomenal community. As recently as this month, I found a new home on a different server with a new FC, and holy shit, it has been just the absolute best thing. They're supportive, fun, and chill. A lot of the folks are married couples my age, many with kids, so even our schedules tend to align so we can play together. And we've even been getting into the harder raid content, and it has been an absolute blast not having to worry about toxic jerks ruining the experience. This is why I love MMOs in general. When you can find an awesome group of like-minded people and just chill together, there's nothing better." And then he says, "Good grief, that sounds sappy, but it's true." I disagree, Megalith, if you're listening. I don't think it's sappy at all. Yes, sorry, I wasn't.
Like, MMOs
suck. No, actually, what I was going to say is that not only do I not think it's sappy at all, but that it's so nice and refreshing to hear that kind of story from an MMO player, because so many folks, myself included, that used to play, they signed off for the same reason. People aren't friendly, or like it was all kind of similar stuff. You don't want to play with people you don't know because it gets weird. And so this is kind of like the polar opposite experience of how great it can be when you're enjoying a game like this with a group that you click with. And mm-hmm. I think that that's an even cooler version of, hey, let's get together and play a few rounds tonight. That's like you have an ongoing game. Yeah. So anyway, I just think it's nice.
Agreed wholeheartedly. And do you think I have two ideas here. One is, I think most people who play online in an MMO or any other online social environment are just fine, normal people. I'm sure most are not like go out of their way, bend over backwards to like be friends, but I think most people are just normal, fine folks. And then every once in a while you encounter a real asshole, and that very alarming minority of people is when you encounter that person, you're like, oh God, this is horrible. This place is horrible. This game is horrible. And that is what shuts you out. What do you think about that? And then my other thought here is that game players have matured and they are older. Not all of them, but I think when we were kids, when we were teenagers and college or whatever, like people older than us were not playing as many video games. I'm painting with a very broad brush, but like we grew up with games as games grew up. So like, yes, there were 40-year-old people playing video games, but mostly it was our generation playing. And now that we are older and everyone above and below us on the age scale is playing, I think, I don't know, I don't play a ton of like online social stuff, but like 9 times out of 10, everyone I meet is fine with the occasional, and then having the occasional experience that Megalith has where you meet extraordinary people. That's great. I don't meet a ton of assholes these days, but maybe I just don't have a sample size large enough.
Yeah, it's hard to say, honestly. I mean, it's been so long since I've sat down and played an MMO or wanted to play an MMO, and I've had some friends encouraging me to try Final Fantasy 14 too, and it does sound interesting to me, but it also is such a large amount of time to spend at a computer when you already spend 8 to 9 hours a day at a computer. When I didn't do that, when I had retail jobs and I worked standing up, I wanted to come home and sit.
Totally,
yeah. But not in the situation I'm currently in. So it just doesn't fit my life. But I still like just hearing that people are having, great experiences. And yeah, I mean, if I look at this and I think about all the things that people have mentioned about gratitude, I see two big themes: bonding, connection with other people, and gaming experiences, touching them and making an emotional impact that they remember.
Formative gaming experiences. Right.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So anyway, but speaking of that, actually, I was thinking about my own game experiences that I'm super grateful for. And I have a few quick ones that I just want to rattle off before we go into the next part of the show. And other than Zelda, of course, which was a huge game for me, I wanted to mention Final Fantasy VII, just a game that absolutely awed me in every way and made me such a hardcore Squaresoft devotee. And I felt like I was seeing the gaming world turn on an axis at that time. I remember seeing the commercials on television for the game and being like, oh my God, video games have commercials. Like, if my poor little 17 or 18-year-old brain could have grasped that, like, there would one day be a world where there were video game commercials everywhere, like, I think I would have short-circuited and gone down.
Yep.
So that... incredibly grateful, not just for the game, not just because it's a great game, storytelling that I still remember really, really well, music that made such a big impact on me and is still really touching to me today. Just all kinds of like themes there. Journey, because I'd never had a video game make me think seriously about death and life. And I felt like Journey was, surely there were, the games are art argument was really big around the time that Journey came out. And a lot of people were like, Journey is the proof that games are art. And I was like, well, games were art when it was fucking Adventure on the Atari, Right. At least in my opinion, anyhow.
Of course.
But
by any definition, of course. But yes, continue.
Yeah, Journey was... I'd never been impacted on a spiritual level as much as I was by Journey. And that just rocked my world and made me see the medium. I feel like I just saw walls fall away from the medium and see it open up to so much more at that point. And so, that game still gives me chills because of all that meaning that it came with for me. And then the last game that I feel like I absolutely have to bring up is Pistol Whip, because Pistol Whip challenged a part of me that I thought I knew, I'm just not a competitive gamer. I'm a solo gamer. I play alone, and I mean, I think if I really dig deep and look at myself, I was just afraid I was going to be beaten and laughed at. And that was like the reason I didn't want to play against other people. But what was cool about Pistol Whip was that it made me competitive in a solo environment.
Totally. It's leaderboards. Yeah, exactly right.
And I didn't think I had a competitive streak, and here I am like 2 years later, still competing. Like tonight before the podcast, I worked on like my Deadeye scores and like got into the top 20 in the world. And I was just like, fuck yeah, I rule.
That's amazing.
But
that's amazing.
Like that is a kind of confidence that I was really never able to have before either. So, I think when a game makes like a permanent change on your worldview and like you maybe like the way you see things or the way that you thought of yourself, I feel like that's really a landmark thing, So there are many more, but those are the ones that are sticking in my head like at this time.
Yep. Asynchronous competition. We don't It's funny to me because leaderboards always felt like a thing of the ancient times, arcades where
Pac-Man.
Our RFB is the high scorer at the arcade, and Pac-Man. One day I could beat that person, but I'll never meet them, and I have to put the quarters in to do so. And so games have come so far since then, and they always seem to be about synchronous online multiplayer. You know, who can shoot who the fastest and the best, and who can race who, but leaderboards are back in a big way and have been for some time, but most people don't think about them. And then here comes Pistol Whip or Beat Saber or I never had Guitar Hero, but I don't know if there was an online thing about that, but I think there was stuff like that.
I think there is. I know, funny enough, I know Rock Band does have an online component, because I have a friend who still competes with his friends in Rock Band to this day, and they're like in like the top 10 like performers of all time. I thought that was so awesome. I was like,
amazing.
How fun.
Yeah. Yep. And then, gosh, you are making me think, on this very tangentially I keep a lot of lists of like, hey, maybe I'll play this or that one day. And Final Fantasy VII, the original, not the remake, is on Switch. You can just pop it on the Switch and play it and revisit it. And it doesn't hold the same place in my heart as other Final Fantasies do, but the way you're talking about it here again is making me wonder if that might be worth popping into in a casual way on the Switch. We talked about this as like, am I going to sit down in front of a computer or a TV for a long period of time and play Final Fantasy VII? I don't think I will, but dipping in and out on the Switch could be pretty cool. Have you come back to it in the recent past? I mean, short of the remake.
Yeah, I have several times before the remake. Okay. I've probably tried to replay it. Oh gosh, I don't know, half a dozen times. And I've gotten varying different degrees of far, but I found that I never actually made it all the way to the other side. And I know that with the remake, I will do that because I'm seeing it in a new way. So, it was the perfect reason to do that. But I've kind of also hit a point, and I can't remember if we've ever mentioned this on the show or not, where I'm kind of like, man, like our time, right? Like, how many spoons we have to spend on games. Like, as much as I've loved certain games, unless they're really short games, I feel like it's really hard for me to go back and spend 40, 50, 60 hours on a game that I've already spent that on now. Because I'm like, maybe it's FOMO, but I'm just like, there's so many other things that I still want to play. And I haven't. And so it's just unlikely unless I'm like in the mood for a specific kind of comfort. And if I am, then I might just go and play it for a little while.
Yes, I'm struggling to find similar balance because I do want to return to certain things and I want to have that comfort. But then I am looking at like, oh, well, okay, this is a 100-hour comfort blanket. Am I really gonna invest there? Yeah. It's an interesting thing. It's tricky. And then also, think, and I'll talk a little bit more about this maybe a bit later, but I am making choices about which games to revisit with and without the kids to introduce them to certain games.
Yes.
And that's a different context for me. It adds a layer of not urgency, but like, hey, what am I really going to spend XYZ hours to replay this? No, but would I do that to engage with the kids on this game if they like it too? Yeah,
well, yeah, because then you're watching them play it or you're playing it and seeing it through their eyes. I think It's totally different.
Yep. Yeah. So those are just things, like you said, in our limited time in our day, in our lives on our planet Earth, deciding which hours to spend where in an infinite sea of endless things can be a challenge sometimes. A very first world problem to have.
It is true. It is absolutely true. Well, I think that's all I have on my piece for gratitude, at least for right now. And of course, I still want to hear what you're playing. So maybe at this point we play the music.
Oh, we make it official?
Do we do it?
Well, look, this is gratitude all the way. This is a gratitude all the way down. So we're going to we're just sticking in the same segment. Okay. If we transition to another segment, no, then we can't. It's going to break. The cops will get us. We can't do it.
Okay. I like this. It's spicy. We're spicing it up. What are you playing then?
Well, I'll talk about my gratitude piece here. Because not much has changed on the current gaming menu for me, but it's interesting that you came at it from these are the 3 games that I'm grateful for, and that conversation led you to I'm grateful for Journey because it made me see things this way or that. And when you suggested this episode to me, I didn't actually think in terms of games. I thought in terms of experiences like that. Like you said, sitting down with your uncle and encountering Pac-Man or Zork for the first time, like that is something I find really compelling. So for me, the gratitude stuff, the things that our listeners and Discord members were talking about, learning, like I feel I have felt for a long time that I have gotten an education from games, and not like, not in a like Carmen Sandiego, did I learn geography at school this week? Because that stuff always felt grafted on in an unnatural way. I was not engaged. Oregon Trail I found to be a compelling thing in school and beyond, because it's a fucking brutal survival game. If you break it down, I showed that to my daughter, and we made a video about it for our channel. And
oh, cool!
It's quite funny if you're interested. It's one of my favorite game videos that I've done with her for the channel, because. Because, like, typical kid, she names the party members after people she knows and family members, and then one by one they start dying of dysentery.
Oh God!
And her 2021 brain is like, so like, could we craft a healing potion or something? I'm like, no, they're fucking dead. Welcome to the real world. Okay. This is the Oregon fucking Trail. Yeah. So anyway, I digress there, but like, I have always loved strategic games, deep games with sprawling experiences that force you to think about things like time spent, resource management, critical decisions, permanent death, or permanent decisions that will impact the future of whatever you're playing, tech trees or research trees, things, this is civilization type games where it is not replaying actual history, but as you're making your way through the eras and the technologies of the time, you're like, oh, right, we can't do this or that until we pin down how steam power works. And then it unveils this whole next chapter of the human story. Like, and even boiling that down into RPG mechanics that we were talking about earlier, like the methodical nature of decision making and decision trees in various genres of games, number one, keeps my ADD brain plugged in to the experience. I need that. We need those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And then it also, I feel fairly confident that those types of experiences have made me have educated me and allowed me to approach my work in more methodical or strategic ways.
Oh, I love that.
And it's not 1-to-1, is playing a strategy game going to make me more strategic at, I don't know, being a stockbroker or a financial planner? I don't know, but I have this feeling that I am better at life in some dimensions because of the games I have grown up playing, chosen to play, and continue to enjoy. And I am grateful that those experiences exist because too many things that we have talked about here, if you handed me a book and said, read this book and that's how you'll learn how to be good at things, I'd be like, oh, fuck no. Like, I can't do this textbook thing. I will never be able to get through it.
Yeah.
So I have to learn in a different way. And games are a way to do that. I'm always thinking about mechanics, like family board game night or whatever, whoever's cracking out the game. I'm like, okay, like whatever we're sitting down to play here, like, why is it interesting? What is everyone's motivation? Why do people, if you're the blue tokens, like, what does that mean for me and for you? And understanding that is so important to me. Like, it's a fixation. Like, I must understand, okay, you're doing this and okay, there's some randomness because there's a dice roll here, but we're not playing Yahtzee where we're just rolling dice. There's actually a strategy here. And then I'm like ranking in my mind, okay, is this Candyland? Are we, if Candyland is the zero, like literally Candyland plays itself. Whatever is in the deck at the time when you start the game is already decided. There's literally no gameplay in the game of Candyland. You pick a card, you move to that color, opponent picks a card, they move to that color, etc. until the game's over. All the way up to, I don't know, Magic the Gathering or a Gloomhaven or whatever, these incredibly complicated things. I have to know where we are on that sliding scale of player agency, and that obsession with game mechanics is so important to my professional and personal life. I think does any of that make sense?
It all makes perfect sense to me.
Okay.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I mean, I know because you read the internet like I do, that there are
twice. I've read the internet twice.
The whole internet. There's been tons of studies that have basically proven, that hand-eye coordination is improved, that spatial thinking is improved. Like, I mean, you're not making this up. It's documented.
Right. Yeah.
Documented stuff.
Dude, I mean, talking about RPGs, and hey, take it all the way back to Legend of Zelda. Like, I'm clueless out in the world. Like, if you don't give me GPS, like, I don't know where. I'm going.
So lost.
But like, the ability to correlate my location with the spatial awareness of a map or a wider world, like opening the map in a video game and being like, all right, I'm here, and then if I go left and then down through this door and then around here, and then that's locked, so then through the other way. That reasoning alone is like, where the hell would I do that? Short of being a cartographer or being on a ship in real life, like, I would never read a map in my real fucking life, but yet I do it every single minute of game playing, and that's I don't know. I think there's something in there.
It's more fun in game playing because I feel like the maps like help give you directives in video games, whereas in real life you're just like, where the fuck am I? And like I think our brains, right, like the ADHD brains, like just they scramble when they look at that big map full of symbols, and you're like, what? I don't know.
Correct. Yeah. So whatever that educational strategic brain attaching thing that happens with games and gameplay and game mechanics, I'm grateful for its effect on my wider life, And then the other thing I'll say in terms of gratitude has just been most recently in my life, being able to share games with the kids. And it's easy, it's cheap. It's like, what kid where you're like, hey, you want to play a video game? Like, no kid is going to be like, nah. Of course kids are going to want to play. So it's an easy way, but I guess I'm fortunate that I love a thing that my kids will obviously like. I can't think of a good example. If I loved Civil War history and I was like, hey kids, do you want to talk about Gettysburg? Like no one would, we would not share that passion until many, many years from now.
Right.
But I'm thinking about it. I've been thinking about it recently because when my daughter was 5, and she was, she was on the path to reading, definitely aware of words and letters and things. And she's a very bright kid. So she was, had an aptitude for that stuff. I played through Chrono Trigger with her on my phone, and it was a slow, and we had played many Zelda games, Skyward Sword, Wind Waker, a variety. She was very, very engaged with adventure story driven games, but never wanted to play them. She never wanted the controller. She just wanted to be next to me and play them. And I guess I just thought that was like, oh, that's right. Of course, she can't play this. How could she play this? It's too complicated, but she likes to watch me. I will read the text to her.
Sure.
And then we're together. And so we got into this nice groove of like, I'm emulating an RPG like Chrono Trigger, a SNES RPG Chrono Trigger on my phone, super easy to do. And then night A, we'll read a storybook. Night B, we'll play 15 minutes of Chrono Trigger, which is just me reading text to her in bed before bed. It's essentially the same as reading a storybook or like a chapter book. And she really, really was very engaged with it. And also like, I'm explaining time travel and time travel paradoxes to a 5-year-old, and she kind of gets it. And I'm like, holy shit. In what other context could a 5-year-old possibly process this information?
I don't even know.
Right. So that's obviously a wonderful bonding experience. And I'm reminded of that again now because my son is 5, a completely different trajectory with games. He wants to play. He wants the controller. He wants to be in control. He plays to an obsessive degree where it sometimes becomes a challenge to separate him from whatever he's playing. And I'm excited for him because he currently plays games that require no reading. But as he embarks on his abilities to read, he will like the whole world of books and games and whatever else comes along with reading is about to be before him. And we have these pixel art perler bead magnets of all the characters from Chrono Trigger because I did a video with my daughter about Chrono Trigger 2, which is one of my favorites from the channel as well. Like we had finished the game and then she like recapped it and reviewed it and stuff. And so these pixel art characters have been on the fridge for years now, and my son's always like, who's this guy? Can I play with this? Like what's up with this frog? And he loves these, like he loves looking at them and playing with them, but he has no clue who they are. And I'm like, oh, you're 5. I played Chrono Trigger with Amelia when she was 5. Maybe you would want to play that? I actually asked him today. I was like, you want to play this game? And obviously, hey kid, want to play a game? Yeah, yes, I would like to play a game. Thank you very much. But I think it might be time to go around again on this very special game. And he's a totally different kid. So is he going to understand time travel the way she did? I don't know. But
maybe
maybe he will, but he will enjoy this. And I actually had to say to him, I was like, all right, well, this is like a complicated game that you have to be able to read, and I'm going to play it. Are you going to be okay with me playing the game? And he's like, he was hesitant. I was like, all right, yeah, I guess I could get on board with that idea. But anyway, it's a long-winded way to say that it's an easy way to really, really share a bonding experience with the kids, and it goes in both directions, actually, especially for me, which is hey kids, let's learn about Gettysburg. No thanks. And then a kid would say, any kid would say to me, hey, want to build these Legos? And I'm like, oh God, that sounds so fucking boring. And sure, of course, I will do that when it is asked of me, and I will muscle through that. But like, boredom is very hard for me. And so having a thing that we can both be super plugged into at the same time and fully invested in simultaneously, and talking about and bonding with, and then, hey, at breakfast the next morning, we can continue the conversation about it. Like, my daughter and I are playing Unpacking simultaneously. Aww. On 2 different Switches. So she's playing her version, I'm playing my version, and we're just like laying next to each other doing it. And it's so funny. I was like, hey, what do you think about, the girl moves from this house to this house? She's like, I was like, what do you think about the story? Like, what's changing? She's like, what story? She just thinks it's like random houses, like just new house, new house, new house.
She's not
like,
she's missing that element of the storytelling.
No clue. And also, I think she presumed that it was like an endless game. Like, there'll always be a new house, a new room or whatever. And I thought that would be funny. And I know a lot of listeners have played or might be playing Unpacking. And that was so funny to me that she had
really
no
is
concept.
Funny. Although I totally feel her. Like, I wish that it had also, I mean, like, I loved the story, but if someone was like, hey, do you want the story or do you want to just unpack like 50 rooms? I'd be like, fuck, I got to think about it.
Yeah. Procedurally generated unpacking levels, that they need Unpacking 2. Let's do that. Right. Let's make that.
Right. I mean, yeah. Anyway, yeah, that's a thought.
So that's it. I mean, and I've said this too. The other thing with Animal Crossing and similar games is like, my wife doesn't play a lot of this stuff, and the Animal Crossing island, the shared world, the shared virtual space that our entire family got to play, got to inhabit together during a pandemic, was a special thing. So,
wow.
Again, family time. And again, this goes back to what everyone was saying in the Discord too. These formative experiences, our kids get to have them too around this very special medium. So there's, I do have the gratitude on that vein for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's it.
Lovely. I feel all ready to eat a giant meal now and bask in the lovely happiness of all the great things that we have.
Let's do it. Happy Thanksgiving. We are grateful for you if you are listening to this.
Darn right. Thank you guys for listening and for caring about this show and for always putting in your input to have your thoughts about games heard and talked about. We just could not appreciate it more.
Yep. Absolutely. So we hope you're enjoying some time off and some quality time with family and friends. And we will be talking with you in 1 week's time. Thanks.